Welcome to the PodFather podcast. And this week I'm going to have a guest. And just before I start, to just let you find my 6 podcasts. You can see the graphic. It nearly tells you what they're doing. And there's a QR code for those watching on YouTube, BitChute, and Rumble. I'm also providing virtual assistance at va.world. And you find everything at roycon.com. And my guest, he's not new to me because he was actually on my speaking podcast. And I was checking earlier. He was actually in June the 3rd, 2022, episode 155. And I would actually encourage people to go back there because we covered a lot. And a lot of times when you have a guest coming on, sometimes they're kind of just gone and disappear. But you weren't like that. You actually helped me to improve my LinkedIn. And we had another call for, I don't know, was it like an hour or 2 hours? But you were really helping. And we stayed in contact since that time. So one, I actually really appreciate everything he's doing. He has the experience. I'm delighted to bring him on. He's been on, I've seen that it says over 100 podcasts. I've looked at his website and he helps people by actually showing the shows he's been on. And we'll touch on that as well. It's nearly 200. So it's possibly 200, I think, not just over 100. So I'd say we're 200 or maybe even more. You're the author of the book, Build a LinkedIn Profile for Business Success. And the thing on that is, it's got all 5-star reviews. There's always haters. There's haters of podcasts, there's haters of everything. For some reason, people don't hate you, Daniel. They just give you love, which is, it's unusual. So you're French-born, Israeli raised. Please welcome Daniel Alfon.
Roy, thank you very much for having me on the PodFather. And the reason people may be okay with me is that they see that I was a guest on your show. So they say, he's okay, let's love him.
So, there's so many different things that we can touch on today. And I think the first, because you've been on so many different shows, the pros and cons of what you've seen, because I go on shows as well. And I suppose even from the forums, people turning up and things, what you've noticed, what you would wish more would be doing.
That's a great question. We can discuss hosts and we can discuss guests. Let's try with hosts first. 99% of hosts I've had the privilege of speaking with are as professional and pleasant as you. I was listening to the recent episode you released with Alex Sanfilippo, founder of Podmatch, and thanks to Podmatch and Alex, we're having this conversation, and we had the earlier conversation. So I want to shout out and thank Alex and Alessia and their team. Podmatch helps us know like the schedule and read more about the host, and hosts who have a pre-recording chat usually help guests better understand who they're speaking with and the time frame. Some send a short document before, and probably the single most important tip would be to, as a guest, to listen to the show you're going to be part of, and that will help you understand the personality of the host and what would resonate with the host. And maybe we can touch on LinkedIn and what to do or what not to do later.
And like with the Podmatch, because not only I had the interview with Alex, but I've kind of showed the profile as well. But I think it's very good. And the fact that I've been kind of early days in that, but they got rid of a lot of I call them tire kickers, or people that just don't respect you, don't show up. Have you had many that just didn't turn up? Because it's happened me on the crypto one for some reason, not necessarily all from Podmatch, because I get pitched hundreds of pitches.
No, I had one no-show. So my experience is pleasant, and let's remember that you can now rate hosts and guests on the platform, which means that before the show, you would see, has the guest been professional or not, and that's also an important factor when you, Roy, decide to have someone on your show. So now Podmatch has made it even more transparent and the uncertainty is limited. You know, because 30 people have spoken with that person, whether they're professional or not.
Right. So bringing LinkedIn, connecting it with, because there's both sides as well now. There's like those that were hoping to do like go on a podcasting tour, or the podcasters. Let's start with the podcasters, because I mean, what I was doing, just to let you know what I was doing, at one stage I was just sharing the link. And then I was kind of told, no, that's not really helping, just sharing the video, that you have to have a conversation. So I suppose, what have you noticed? What kind of tips can podcasters do to get more engagement?
Excellent. So two quick tips. The first would be, it's okay to share the link, but make it about the reader or the listener. In other words, instead of saying episode 152 with John McEnroe, you would take a nugget from the conversation, preferably a question without the answer, an intriguing question. And you would ask, why should I work with a VA? And then at the end of your text, you would say, check out this episode with John McEnroe because we're discussing the advantages of VA world. But the question is what makes people interested in the content. So just at the end of the conversation, pick a nugget that's intriguing and write your LinkedIn post starting with that. And at the end, you would mention the guests, but the first approach, episode 20, is only from the host's perspective. Make it about their perspective. It's okay to share the link. Try to tag or mention the host and the guest, so both of them will be able to comment and to repost and to share and to like. And maybe a second quick tip about the way to consider LinkedIn in general. Bro, you don't have to use LinkedIn in order for you to gain more listeners. It's better to use LinkedIn as a way to get more business. And it's not exactly the same thing. Because I could be interested in your services without necessarily listening to the latest podcast. So if your ideal client could be someone interested in maybe launching a podcast, then one thing you could do is run an advanced search and find someone who's started with podcasting and see if you two share a mutual connection and ask that mutual connection to make an introduction. That will enable you to gain more business, and it doesn't mean you have to share a lot. You have a lot of high quality content to share, it's great, but maybe the people who will see that content are only your connections, whereas your future prospects and clients may not be connected with you today.
With some of the platforms like Facebook, I can upload videos and usually kind of some shorts and things like that. And I'm getting very good engagement with that on my own kind of Facebook page for each channel. I mean, sometimes the Polish one's getting like 10,000 in a week, the 6 videos. Yeah, it's great. Because I know with LinkedIn, like you can have a PDF and stuff like that. Are you able to put up little short videos? And for example, for me, rather than putting up shorts of the different podcasts, because that's not really, I don't think, but where I'm sharing, because I've done recordings of like tips that I'm doing here. So some of the episodes are nice and short where I'm just giving, would something like that be beneficial for me? And obviously what other people are offering that they'd be doing something similar.
You could videos is great on LinkedIn, and video content are performing pretty well, but you have to remember that most people do not engage on LinkedIn. It's not because of you, Roy. It's not because of the content. Imagine a pyramid. 90% will be lurkers. They read or they consume the content, they listen. 9% will comment or share or reach out and say something. Only 1% are actually content producers. So the fact that you don't see a lot of engagement on LinkedIn is not because of you, it's because of the way the platform is. People are afraid of commenting because they might fear that their boss or their clients or someone will not like it, or they're afraid of behaving naturally on
Well,
LinkedIn because
I'll
it's
add to that because with the awakening, the amount, because I'm exposing for them, the amount, and this is on all platforms, the amount of people that come up to me and thank me for what I'm doing, but they're afraid to comment because they're afraid their friends will see what they're doing, or like you say, their boss. So there's a lot of people in that kind of thought process.
imagine crypto would have like a love-hate relationship. Some people would love to learn more about it, and some people think it's something else. So people would be afraid to comment, even if they're avid listeners to the show. They won't miss one episode, but they don't feel comfortable engaging on such a public platform. So don't don't make the engagement your goal on LinkedIn, because you may see that the numbers are lower compared with Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. Focus on your business and not necessarily on engagements. LinkedIn numbers tend to be lower. The number of connections people have may be 3,300, so it's a limited reach.
When I like, say, someone's video, and in most social media, they're telling you that. And it's funny because so many people don't realize that. Can you turn that off in LinkedIn? Because there's times where you don't mind and you're making something, but there's other times it's kind of personal and you might know the person and you want to write some nice message. And it's like you don't mind on their profile, whatever it's connected with, but you don't want all the people that know you to see that. Is there ways of turning that off?
That's a great suggestion for LinkedIn to improve, but I'm afraid that today that's not possible. In other words, everything you do is public. What you could do and what's nice to do is simply to message that person and say, hi, thank you for whatever. And that would strengthen your relationship with them, but there's no way for you to, it's basically 0 or 1. Either it's public or it isn't shown. You can't show it only to people you're connected with. There's only one type where you could do it. If you'd like to share a new post, LinkedIn enables you to say this can be only shown to my connections. But that there's also a drawback, because that means they cannot like or comment. There wouldn't be more reach because it's limited to those connections. But in some cases, if you want to have something confidential or brainstorm about your 7th successful podcast, you would ask your
We have enough. I'm not going for 7.
You could ask people about, like, I have 2 titles in mind. What do you think? And you can do that a whole month before launching the new show, or for one of your clients. Doesn't matter. So they would also get, they would feel a bit more privileged because they would see that before the show is out. So that's the only case where you can share something that's limited to your connections. But again, all connections. You can't say those in America, I want to show them. Ladies, I don't want to show. Either everyone or none at all.
I've seen you do like polls, asking people, say the podcasters or whatever, which is a great way because you're engaging, which in turn people then are looking at what you're doing. How beneficial is creating polls to, like for me, like how would you like a coach or whatever, or a virtual assistant, and you're listing the things. Have you found that something like that gets a lot of engagement?
The good posts get a ton of attention, but it's not easy to write an interesting poll. It's not easy because LinkedIn limits, the question has to be very short. So it's very difficult for you in less than 10 words to ask a pertinent question that will make people stop and say, oh, what is Roy actually asking and what's the poll like? So you may have to work a lot until you define your poll. But if it's engaging, if people want, like, the question to ask is this so compelling? I want to see the answers. And to see the answers, I have to vote. So I'll vote. And maybe also if there's a way for you to ask people to comment, that would even strengthen and increase the number of the engagement you will have. So one simple way to do it is you offer, say, 3 answers, but you say, if you think otherwise, please comment. So again, not many people will comment, but each comment will make it more visible, and people will be able to vote on the poll. And you can also play with the amount of days the poll is live. You could decide it works for 7 days. You could decide it works for 14 days. You can even create a poll within a specific LinkedIn group, which will not be visible to others. So play with that, but find a question that's so intriguing that your connections will want to know the answers. What question did you have in mind? What poll were you thinking about?
Okay, excellent. So the next one is, say, the profile itself, because I know you were even showing me how to do the video in the little image of the picture, which I found fantastic. But then you have like the description, and I've seen different versions. I look at different people's ones, and some have like a slash, some have a little image that, so for example, I could say, providing virtual assistance coaching, or whatever the different people are doing. Is the image helping? And the other kind of follow-up, because they're kind of connected, is you have your contact details, but then a lot of people, they're kind of putting their website in every little message down. Is that hurting you when you kind of overdo it instead of just having it in the contact details? Because sometimes in the different what I'm done, my experience and everything, they're kind of putting it in the description. Does that hurt you?
Are you speaking about something you shared or about your profile?
In your profile, because in your contact, you could have, say, roycon.com or whatever. And then further on, each little kind of job that I've done, like I could say, my different podcasts, and then and I'm talking from experience of seeing lots of other people doing something similar. I don't even know if I do. I can't remember offhand, but I know I have seen people that actually have that.
So, when I visit your profile, you have your website, right, Kaplan, immediately once I see your profile, and I think that's one way to put it. And the second strong way to do it, like you did, is in the featured section, because the featured section, Roy, it combines the visual and also the link. It's clickable, and then you can go to your website. What you could do, if you'd like, is to take VA World in your experience and create a company page. It's free. It will take you 10 minutes. It will simply show a logo next to VA World. And you could also decide that instead of having VA World, you also show or highlight the podcast. You have 6 different podcasts that are top 1%, top 0.5%, like top 2% worldwide. You can highlight those in your profile as well, in your experience section. Because right now, I have to scroll to see it. It's the third experience you have. If you want to make it second or first, there's a way for you to do it, because basically LinkedIn shows you the reverse chronological order. If you had to pick one, would you rather that we see VA World or the podcasts? It's difficult.
Yeah, I mean, the coaching is the most important thing, and then the VA World will be the thing, not the pod. I mean, the podcast is kind of providing value and stuff like that.
Okay, so what you could do is visit your profile on desktop, scroll down to the experience section, click on the pencil next to the experience section, and look for 2 arrows. And if you click on if you see 2 arrows, you can drag and drop and make VA World a second, or change it in any way you like. So force the reader to see what you'd like to see first instead of the chronological order, which in some cases is not the best order you'd like.
Excellent. Yeah, no, brilliant. So this is one that on Facebook, you get so many people reaching out that are offering podcast promotion stuff. And yeah, the odd time there is people that know what they're doing, but 99% of them don't. They're either scammers or they haven't a clue, and they just annoy you, and they don't understand no thanks. They just keep, and eventually you have to. And unfortunately, I've noticed in the last 2 months or so, they're all navigating onto LinkedIn. And sometimes it's good because they're coming in and they're commenting, and what they're doing is they're engaging first to try to make it look like they're your friend, and they're giving a thumbs up or going, great episode, and then they're going for the pitch. They don't even say hello, they just pitch. And I think it's actually damaging because there's so many of them now. I don't know, do they go near you because, you don't have the show as such, you're guesting, but what's your thoughts on that?
I'm afraid LinkedIn has become attractive for many spammers, and podcast is simply one of the plat du jour where we can spam people. They're not only damaging their reputation, they may damage the whole industry, if you'd like. So you can report those people if they're unprofessional, and the strongest sanction is basically to ignore them, because they'll live off the clicks that they may get, and they would send you a connection request, and then immediately they would go for the pitch, or they would do something that are unprofessional. You can report actions that are not professional. You can even block. So block means that person will not be able to communicate with you. And if enough people do that, then that person will have to either behave or move to another platform and leave us alone at LinkedIn for business professionals.
Yeah. So with monetization, because that's one that, most podcasters, unfortunately, that's the reason that they throw in the towel. They have a passion project at the start. They go, oh, this is great. A load think they're going to make millions within the first year because they're looking at Joe Rogan making 200 million. I think the second deal that he got was even higher than that. And then they're going, hey, this is costing me money. So from your experience, and you would see different podcasters as well, what different ways can they monetize?
So if you allow me, I'll ask like a preliminary question. Is monetization for you or for some of our listeners, is it a sponsor or is it something else? Let's discuss the question of sponsors because it's one.
I mean, I think let's break it down, because one is sponsorship. So let's start with the sponsors.
Excellent. So if you could identify, let's take the Polish learning Polish podcast. What you could do is, it's a successful podcast on its own. What you could do is ask yourself, who would be the ideal sponsor for that podcast? And I think you would know the answer. And then, and only then, you go to LinkedIn and you run an advanced search and you find the CEO or the VP within that organization. And my guess is that it will take you less than 5 minutes to perform the search and to find the person and to find someone who can make the introduction. So the advanced search is something that many LinkedIn users are either unaware of or don't use very, very well. It's the best kept secret within LinkedIn. So know who the sponsor you're looking for. You can also use LinkedIn as a way to discover sponsors, but ideally you would say, okay, so maybe the Polish air carrier would be a good sponsor. So who do I know within the carrier? And can I speak with that person thanks to LinkedIn? And identifying the sponsor and communicating with them is something that can bring you a meaningful sponsorship, where the carrier would be interested in people learning Polish because it's people who may travel to Poland. So you can identify the right decision maker within the company that you would like to be a sponsor for your show. And the same would go for crypto, for PODFATHER and Awakening. Each would have a different sponsor, but the advanced search would be basically the same. Who would be the ideal sponsor you'd like to have for one of the podcasts that doesn't have a sponsor? Or if you had to pick another sponsor, who would be the ideal sponsor?
Well, I mean, what you said there with the Polish was a brilliant example, and like say the crypto, I mean, it's obviously somebody that's trying to build their crypto platform. Maybe there's a new one on the horizon and they want to kind of get the reach there. And that would be ideal because, and like the other thing is because of whether, like the Polish one, because it's people sometimes they'll become into Poland. I mean, that's an excellent example. The other one, because most of them are in a couple of hundred countries. I checked the Awakening just last week. It was 154 countries, which is insane. It's fantastic to see that. So you have to kind of make sure as well. And this is going out to like whatever the person's show is, because we're all those listeners that have whatever their show is. Sometimes a sponsor might be only just for the American market, but I've got 50% in the American market, and that might suffice for them. So, that's another thing that they can be taken into account.
Interesting. So, about the crypto, are you familiar with input output IOHK? Does it ring a bell?
No,
Or the Cardano Foundation? What I'll do,
I've heard of Cardano, but yeah.
okay. So, I'll suggest that you may speak with Ben O'Hanlon. Ben O'Hanlon is community czar for the Cardano, and I think he could have good ideas for sponsors in this space. He would also be a good guest on your show. And if you'd like, after recording, we'll run an advanced search for you to identify the right decision maker that could be a good sponsor. And I promise that we will chat for 40 minutes, but the actual work will be less than 5 minutes.
Very good. And like with the advanced search, because there's also, I don't know, is it called inmail? Because there's people, it's not a case of, and it's kind of died down a bit, but at one stage I was getting bombarded with messages. And yeah, the odd time I'd engage, it was like, okay, yeah, I'm kind of interested in this. But so many times nothing to do with me. And it's like, why are they even coming to me? Like HR companies especially. What's the price point for that? And is it all AI driven, or must the people do a manual search and do the message?
So email is not synonym with advanced search. Email is basically spam. It has become spam. So it's a way for you, say you see someone and you send them a message. The automation part behind it means that most people have not even visited your profile. So they say, show me all CEOs, show me all people with the word podcast, and bombard them with this cookie cutter, I'm sorry, the same exact text that they would send to you. And they would say, I bumped into a profile. You see, you're doing amazing things. Would you be interested in a chat about podcast, whatever? They're giving the profession a bad name because they haven't read. Like you don't need assistant in launching a podcast. You've helped hundreds of people do it, and you have amazing, successful podcast on your own. So that basically shows that the person hasn't done their homework. Advanced search is something else. Advanced search is saying, Lot is the company I'm interested in. Let me see who do I know within the company. And then once you identify, Roy, the right decision maker, the biggest secret is to know when to leave the platform. So imagine I would find the VP and they would be Lech something. If you share a mutual connection, my advice would be to communicate with that mutual connection outside of LinkedIn, to ask how it's been, and to ask, would you feel comfortable enough to introduce me to the Lot VP? Because I may have an interesting sponsorship opportunity for them. And if they make the introduction, then it would be made by email outside of LinkedIn. LinkedIn has basically shown you the name of the person, your target, and the most important name is the name of your mutual connection. But there's no messaging in what I described. You don't message anyone on LinkedIn. LinkedIn shows you the person, and then you leave the platform, you chat with them, and when they say, yes, I can make the introduction, you speak with the decision maker, you offer him, they become a sponsor on your show, and then you connect.
I've actually done that, and it's brilliant that you're actually explaining that in detail, because a lot of people wouldn't know about that or how to do it properly. But when you get these other ones, the in-mail ones as such, or spam, like sometimes, yes, I'm interested, or no, I'm not, and it just kind of disappears. But can you report to their spam? Or because I mean, the reality is LinkedIn's main priority is making money, and they're obviously charging. I don't know, is it per message or is it per month or what the price point is for doing that? But it's annoying because at the end of the day, we've got so much time, and when you have to engage in a message, because for example, for me, like if you write to me on an email, it's hard. It could slip through the cracks. But LinkedIn is my place where I connect with people because I'll always get the message. It's one of the best ones for me. And when I'm getting a load of that crap, it's like you're affecting my kind of my go-to zone. Can you mark it as spam and stuff like that? And does it affect them then from being able to keep doing it to other people?
So what LinkedIn shows you now are two types of inboxes, if you like, the focused one and the other. What you could do is basically ignore. I'm sorry, but ignore the 90% of spammers that you get. And when you reply or you say you're interested, these are the only one that you would actually engage with. I'm afraid as long as LinkedIn is successful, you'll keep getting spam and you'll keep getting email because LinkedIn has over 1 billion users. Three people sign up every second. It's not going away, and I'm afraid people will not do the proper work and will keep emailing you for years, offering services you never thought you would need.
So with the monetization, we talked about the sponsorship. So what other ways?
If the podcast is a means to grow your business, then let's discuss the business itself. Who would be the ideal client for you?
Well, if I look at, say, the podcast, it's basically, for me, is existing podcasters that want to up their game or those wanting to start. That's kind of the main kind of focus of this.
Cool. So what you could do is identify a few communities of podcasters within LinkedIn groups, but you have a certain number of followers or connections. Okay, you have thousands of connections, but still, you're not connected to most of the potential podcasters in the world. So what you could do right now, everything you share will be seen by thousands or by some of your connections. But what you could do is identify a number of podcasting related groups on LinkedIn, and you join those groups and you monitor what happens in the groups, and then you decide that there's one or two groups that are relevant for you because you're a member of groups, but they're more about either health or Poland. I don't see a lot of
Yeah, honestly, I think it was 50 groups, but that's going back even real estate and stuff like that. And then I stopped the notifications because it was like 50. I don't know what it is now, but I think it was like 50 groups you were allowed. And was it like 50 emails a week based on that? And I was like, okay, unsubscribe or whatever. So maybe I'm still in the groups, but not getting the notifications. So I don't even know what groups I'm in. So that's shame on me for not actually. And what you've just said there is a another great tip.
Thanks. It's now LinkedIn has enabled you to join up to 100 groups, and they no longer send you digest emails for the groups, for most of the groups. So you will not get a lot of emails. That's actually let's revert to VA world. That's actually a great work for a VA because it's repetitive. Like you could, Roy, identify maybe 10 groups, and then you would instruct your VA and you'd say, in each group, every week, post this one resource. And you would monitor them and they would do it, and they would basically drive traffic to your website. Again, the first idea is to, instead of just harassing your existing connections, try to find the clients where they are. Because if I'm intrigued about launching a podcast, I may join a podcaster's community. And there, one thing they could do is share content. But the second thing, which is even more valuable, is to vet and identify within the group 5 or 10 potential prospects for you. And once they show you the names and you say, these are good prospect, the last one is not, you again instruct your VA to message or to communicate with those interesting prospects. And that means you will gain business out of the group without sharing anything. So go where the fish are, fish where the fish are, and remember that your reach is limited to your connections. Even if you had 40,000 connections, it doesn't matter. It's a person. LinkedIn has hundreds of millions of users in the EU and in America. So go where they are. Ask someone to do that work for you.
Excellent. Another fantastic tip. So, like, I mean, I mentioned at the start how you went through my whole profile and helped me. So for those, because we've kind of touched on the thing, but there's a lot to the LinkedIn page. So, I mean, obviously people can go and get your services and everywhere, but what else would you recommend? Because you're after giving some brilliant advice there. And I know myself, when I'm actually editing this, I'll be making so much notes and action tips and trying to do it. So I hope the listeners will be doing the same. So what are the things for their profile that you would encourage people to do?
Very simply, 3 questions. One, who's your ideal reader? And that usually would be your ideal client, or if you're an employee, your ideal hiring manager in the next company you'd like to work for. Second action, what if you could make your ideal readers visit your profile? What action would you like them to perform? And so if you had to pick one, would you like them to go to your website or to someplace else? And make sure that it's easy for them to understand what the next logical step is. And usually the next logical step is to go to your website, or maybe some people would say the ideal next step would be to schedule a strategy call, or to download gated content, or to join your existing newsletter, or to do something else. So pick one action you'd like people to do, and make sure that when people visit your profile, it's easy for them to make the call and to reach that decision. That's it. I don't want to make it too overwhelming.
No, it was, I'm just big. But another thing that because I knew I had a different, but you have a Spotify list of the shows you've been on. And I was like, oh, that's impressive. I've never seen anybody do that. And that's like, because I mean, I've listened to a few of your episodes. You always give incredible value. Like, I mean, even today, like, and you're helping like the host as well. Like, you've done it before on the other show, and I've heard you do it on other things as well as kind of covering the thing. But I've never seen anybody have like a Spotify playlist of the shows you've been on, which in turn is helping them because you're driving traffic to their show. Plus, on your website, you're doing the exact same thing. You've got ones that are under a certain time, and you broke it down into different, which it's very impressive. And it's kind of just going that you're kind of appreciating as well, like the shows that you've been on.
I'm thankful for each host that had me, and I was lucky to speak with amazing people. And without podcasting, I would never be able to speak with you in the first place. So what's more natural than to highlight their work? I've met amazing people, and you're helping people in so many ways. Spotify, I'm a user. Like I listen to music, but it's easy to just like you have a YouTube playlist, to create another one on Spotify.
Like I haven't even, I mean, I've been on a lot of shows and I was like, that's another thing that I must do. I think it's brilliant because I mean, when you go on different shows, it's like every different host has a different character. They ask different questions. You just don't know what way it's going to go. And it's when somebody actually likes your style or whatever, like they're learning each time because you're giving different information based on the questions and just whatever tangent it goes on. And I mean, I should do the same. And so as another, you're giving me a lot of homework, Daniel.
I was hoping I was giving your virtual assistant more work for you to have less work.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
No, listen. Yeah, I mean, we've covered. Unless there's anything else that you would like to cover for guest podcast or yourself, feel free to mention.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take you at your word. I'm going to see when the 7th successful podcast is launched. Remember, people, Roy said, no, I will not have number 7. I will check until number 7 is out, and then I'll say, Roy, thank you very much for having me and for the amazing guests you had on all 6 shows, and thank you very much.
So how can people find you? And I know you might just mention the services as well, because I mean, you've got a few different things between short price things and one-on-one. So you might let people know the different services that you're offering.
That's very sweet. On danielalfon.com, that's Daniel Alfon. You could see resources, and you have a store. The store has anything from done for you services, one-on-one people can book with me, or digital downloads, all sorts of price ranges from less than $30 to $2,000. Just say that Roy sent you, and I'll try to be kind.
Listen, I'll make sure to put the link both on the audio and the video. But thoroughly enjoyed it and really appreciate all the tips for me as well. But I know that the listeners will get a load from it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Roy.
No problem. So that's all for the Podfather. You'll find everything on podfather.me and everything about me and the va.world for virtual assistants. And you can scan the QR code and go to roycon.com. Until next week, take care.